It seems like I've worked my whole life to make my wife happy, and it's been a waste of time. It really hurts a guy to realize that all his efforts and intentions were in vain. After 23 years of marriage, I now realize that I didn't know the mother of my children. She always wanted something better. No matter how hard I worked, it was never enough. She made me feel like I was a good provider, and I always felt good about being able to give her something. But she always wanted more. Sharon and I got married right after I graduated from high school. Sharon had dark hair and wore it short. She was pretty and had a great figure. Our sex life had always been good, until recently, and I had no reason to doubt her fidelity. I started out as an engine rebuilder, and today I'm a heavy equipment mechanic. I make damn good money, or at least I think I do. Our early life was pretty typical. Our first house was small, and when the kids came along, we switched twice. Now the 2 children are gone. Our daughter Sarah got married, and our son John joined the Air Force. The house was now bigger than we needed, but she still didn't seem happy. My parents had both died in an automobile accident many years before. When the kids left, Sharon said she needed something to do, and of course that's where the trouble started. She took a job with a real estate management firm. Except for a few secretarial-type employees, it was basically a one-man firm, Glenn Sebastian, her boss. Of course, I met the guy. I didn't like him, and he ended up having an affair with my wife, even though he was married. It was at that point that I just decided to give up. What was the purpose of continuing? My kids were grown and my wife was cheating on me. I made one last attempt. Sharon, since the kids are gone, I'd like to sell the house and move to Florida. How would you feel about that? I can get a job there, and we can live the good life under the warm Florida sun. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that. She didn't even look up from the morning paper. Our conversations were becoming less and less civilized every day. Of course, the problem was me. I'm not good with words, and I can't convince anyone of anything because I simply don't have the language skills necessary to do so. Sharon put up with it because she was used to it. Glenn Sebastian was the complete opposite. He always knew what words to say and how to say them. It was easy to see how he got my wife into his bed. I guess what I'm trying to say, Sharon, is that I wish I could get you away from Glenn Sebastian so I could get my life back. Charlie, Glenn is not going to disappear, and we have nothing to go back to. I'm going to keep working, and you're going to keep working, and we're not moving anywhere. End of discussion. Although I had evidence of the affair, I never mentioned it to Sharon. She went about her daily business thinking I was too dumb to realize what was going on. With $2,000 from my fishing boat fund, I got the detective's report and pictures of everything that was going on. Sharon was still reading the paper when I left for work. I quit my job that day. Sharon and I had a lot of fun when we first got married. We went fishing together, and I went to a few concerts to please her. We did little things to make each other happy. Having kids made our lives more complicated, but we still always found time to entertain ourselves. As the kids got older, I seemed to work harder. I think that's when we started to drift apart. I wanted to save for our retirement. Sharon wanted to enjoy the good life. She insisted on driving a BMW, which I felt we couldn't afford. It was easier for her to get it than to argue about it. No matter how hard I tried, I still couldn't keep her away from Glenn Sebastian's bed. I loved her, but I didn't like the way she treated me, so I gave up. Seymour Schlump, my favorite lawyer, got the next $2,000 from my yacht fund. I gave him the detective's report and the photographs. I signed some blank forms, attached a power of attorney for real estate, and told him to serve the divorce papers the following Monday. Today was Sharon and Glenn's motel day. They went to the same motel, same room, same time, same days of the week. What Sharon found exciting about that was beyond my comprehension. They usually checked in around 11 and left at 2. I still had a few hours to get ready. Sebastian's holding company had many small buildings they rented out, but the main income came from 2 old warehouses. Glenn had purchased them for pennies when the previous owners refused to bring the buildings up to code. No one worked in the warehouses. They were just used to store goods and the like for various local businesses. I was willing to bet that Glenn hadn't even put in a fire alarm system. I spent 30 minutes in each warehouse, setting up the equipment, and then headed to the bank. I cleared out the savings account, the current account, and the money market account. After canceling the credit cards, I took all the money and put it in the locker at the bus station. It was time to spring into action. It was a simple plan to commit mass destruction and go to jail. I didn't see how anything could go wrong. I pulled into the parking lot of the Desca Motel just as the fire trucks were speeding down the street. There were two major warehouse fires on the other side of town, and all the fire departments were responding. Sharon's BMW was parked right next to Glenn's Mercedes. I parked my F-150 in the back of the lot and pulled the tools of my new trade out of the trunk: an emergency glass hammer, an aluminum baseball bat, and a pair of pliers. Precision and timing were important. At any moment, Glenn could get a call that there was a fire in his warehouses. I had to hurry. I set fire to a towel that I soaked in gasoline and stuffed in the gas tank of my car. I had to run as fast as I could because it only took a few seconds for the Ford to burst into flames. It wasn't a loud explosion like in the movies, but something like a muffled whoosh. It seems strange to destroy your own car, but I didn't need it anymore. It took less than a minute to cut the valve stems off 8 tires. I took my time and went around each car, smashing every window with an emergency hammer. This worked well. The only problem was that Glenn's car alarm went off on the first impact. Before he realized what was happening, I started hitting the BMW with a baseball bat. For starters, every panel was smashed pretty good. The hotel staff and a few people staying there were in the parking lot by this time, and it seemed like everyone had a cell phone pressed to their ear. I was standing on top of the Mercedes when Glenn finally came out of the room, pulling up his pants. He shouted something to me, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. I think he wanted me to stop pounding on the roof of his car, but I wasn't sure. I went back to the BMW and started beating him some more when the police finally arrived. Fire trucks were all over the city at the scene of a massive double warehouse fire, so they just had to leave my poor car burning to the ground. As the cops were putting me in the patrol car, I saw Sharon looking out the motel room window. I was processed, printed, and photographed within an hour. The photographer was pissed because I refused to remove the smug grin from my face. It was nice to finally sit in my camera and relax. Since I had pleaded guilty to everything that had happened at the motel, there was no need for any lengthy courtroom drama like on TV. They mentioned something about the warehouses a few times. I told them I didn't know anything about it, and they soon stopped it. I'm sure they would have put it all together later, but right now they didn't have good communication. Once word spread around the station about what I had done and why I had done it, things seemed to get a little more comfortable. The next morning, Sharon was there with my bail. There was no money in the account, so the only place she could get it was from Glenn or take out a second mortgage. I was pretty sure Glenn didn't want to contribute 10% of the $400,000. I could see Sharon through the glass partitions behind the cash register. She looked genuinely pissed off. I knew she knew the accounts had been cleaned out. I got my watch, wallet, lanyards, and money back. I was afraid to go out through the lobby, so I asked one of the security guards if there was another way out to avoid my hostile wife. He chuckled slightly, took me to the fire exit, held the door alarm switch with his baton, and let me out into the alley. Free at last, free at last. Taking cash out of the locker, I bought a bus ticket to Chicago. I didn't have a seat in mind, but there was an express bus going there. I had plenty of time to think as I watched the farmland float by outside the window. I was much worse off now than before, but my cheating wife no longer humiliated me. With my lifestyle, I had enough cash to last me for a couple years, but I knew that eventually I would have to find some kind of job to keep from going insane. I had no idea what I was going to do with income taxes and Social Security. I didn't even know how I was going to get my driver's license, and I knew I would have to do it sooner or later. After Chicago, I took some smaller routes that seemed to stop in every small town in the Midwest. I was traveling through the middle of South Dakota when I found a newspaper left behind by someone. I was insanely bored, so I started reading every line in the paper. When I came across the ads, I found myself reading the same ad 4 times. Heavy farm equipment mechanic required, accommodation on a permanent basis, housing, food, and salary depend on experience, contact Leroy Sammer. I had never even heard of Mitchell, South Dakota. Even though it was late summer, it was cold. The sky was gray and the ground wasn't much more inviting. It looked like the perfect place to wallow in your misery. The Fairfax Equipment Repair Shop was housed in a large steel warehouse-type building that resembled an airplane hangar. The sliding doors were actually large enough to bring in the largest farm equipment. I never found out where the name came from, I think from the previous owner. I had no problem getting a job. The living quarters were on the top floor of the maintenance building. It was austere and not at all homey and cozy. The pay was low for this kind of work, and the mention of boarding meant that the room had a kitchenette. The best part of it all was my new roommate, Jorge. Jorge Toledo was born in El Paso, so he wasn't illegal. He was a little older than me, but we had the same build and looks. He wore his long hair gathered in a ponytail, and he had a big mustache that hung down at the ends like Pancho Villa. I was clean-shaven with a short haircut and wearing glasses. I liked Jorge as soon as I saw him. Jorge worked in hydraulics and mechanics, and he was looking forward to hiring a machinist like me. It was the perfect team. He also had a Mazda truck that I hadn't seen in years. I think they stopped making them in the 70s, but this one was still going, having driven over 300,000 kilometers. After a few weeks, I got settled in and was enjoying my new life. We were both bad cooks, so we spent a lot of time eating out, mostly fast food and junk in diners. Jorge was an alcoholic. Leroy was not a strict supervisor. We could come and go as we pleased and watch the work get done. Leroy handled all the money and customer contacts, so all Jorge and I had to do was fix broken equipment. We enjoyed going to interstate truck stops and having breakfast late at night. Life was good. 4 months went by. I was coming back from a delivery, and Leroy and Jorge were waiting in the parking lot. They both kind of laughed as I parked the delivery car. What the hell was so funny about that? I tried to put a serious spin on the situation. Well, we had a visitor today. A private investigator from Philly was looking for Charlie Terrell. Leroy seemed to be enjoying himself. Although Jorge and I were quite close, our relationship with Leroy was kept on a professional level. We were all close in spirit, but Leroy made a great effort not to get too friendly with the employees. It was easier for him to flick the whip if he kept his distance. Oh shit, I was afraid this was going to happen. Was it from my wife or the bail bond company? He never said. Didn't say how he tracked you down here either. Well, I guess I better move on. Where is he now? Jorge started laughing, and Leroy's giggling seemed to spur him on. Jorge was drunk again. What the hell is going on? What was so funny about this? George couldn't take it anymore. Leroy told the guy, "I'm Charlie Terrell." The guy looked at the picture and shook his head. We talked for a while, and I told him I was illegal and had bought a social security number and driver's license from a guy in Denver. He got really pissed off, but the idiot never asked to see ID. After about 20 minutes, he got in his car and drove off. You guys make a good team. It's nice just to be around you. Leroy was still chuckling as he walked back to his office. It was getting colder. Most of the work was now maintenance rather than repairs. There was no rush, and we could work at a good pace. The nights were getting longer and colder. The days were gray and depressing. I liked that. Jorge started drinking more. That weekend I had a break. When Jorge and I walked into the bar at the Four Corners truck stop, I noticed a cell phone on the seat. Normally I would have just turned to the waitress and gone on my way, but today I had a different idea. I told Jorge to order for me and walked out. I decided to call Sarah first. Dad? What the hell are you doing in Tulsa? I thought I should call you and let you know everything is okay. That's great. We were worried and Mom's freaking out. What brought all this on? Did everyone say you were crazy? What did your mother tell you? Just that you were unhappy with her job, and when she refused to quit, you freaked out and wrecked her car and her boss's car. That's it? That's all she told you? Yeah. After she posted bail, she said you just disappeared. She hired a detective, but he couldn't find you. I think it cost her a lot of money. Next time you see her, ask for a more detailed explanation. She owes you. She's not telling the whole story. What are you doing in Tulsa? Caller ID says Tulsa. I'm not in Tulsa, but I think the guy who lets me use his phone must be from there. Next time you talk to John, let him know it's okay. How's your mom doing? You mean besides being cranky and bitter, she lost her house after you refused to bail her out and she had to move into a mobile home on the highway. The insurance company refused to pay for the damage to her car, so she had to buy a car on a lot that financed itself. BMW's finance company is still demanding payment for the car. She works at a Waffle House near the airport and has to work extra shifts to make ends meet. Every time I talk to her, she curses you to high heaven. Mom's not happy. Well, at least there's some good news. Dad, you're sick. Are you going to tell me what's going on? No, don't tell your mom I called. If you want to know more about what's going on, you'll have to find out from her. I think I understand. Call again when you get a chance. I love you. I love you too, and I'm sorry I can't see you. Bye, bye. I figured I had a few more minutes until my food arrived, so I called Seymour. Seymour, it's Charlie Terrell. What's going on? Oh, damn it, Charlie. You're in a world of shit. You're wanted by the bail bond company. You're wanted by the cops and your wife. Wow, it's nice to be wanted, Seymour. How's my divorce coming? It's all set. Sharon grumbled a little bit, but she finally signed the papers. It'll be final in about 3 weeks, barring any complications. By the way, you don't have a house anymore. Yeah, I heard that. Just curious. What's the status of Glenn Sebastian? Mr. Sebastian is gone, dissolved, out of sight. That's another thing that pissed off your wife. I think she was looking for him to help her out a little bit, and then he left town. It looks like he submitted fake reports to the insurance and mortgage companies about repairs to the sprinkler systems in his warehouses. The insurance company knew it was arson, and he was the prime suspect, so they refused to pay. 2 people who had goods stored in his warehouses also failed to get their insurance, and Glenn had to flee to save his own skin. By the way, I should report this call to the police. You know that, right? I thought so. What are you going to tell them? That you contacted me from Tulsa to find out the status of your divorce. Is that going to be okay? It's okay, Seymour. I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell Sharon, though. When the divorce is final, can you send the papers to my daughter? No problem. Take care of yourself, Charlie. I'm glad you called. By the time I got back to my seat, the waitress had already set up the plates. Before we finished our meal, the trucker monster came to the table looking for his cell phone. He seemed beyond thrilled to have his phone back, and reluctantly agreed to take $20 when I told him I'd made 2 calls. Everyone came forward, but I made Jorge pay for breakfast. He had to stop and refill his drink for the next week before heading home. It snowed and the work slowed down. Leroy didn't mind, and Jorge and I spent more time relaxing. Jorge's drinking got worse. I hadn't cut my hair since I left home. Now my hair was long enough to gather it into a ponytail. Amusing myself, I grew a mustache. Every day, Jorge and I became more and more alike. One day, when he was half sober, I made him explain why he was drinking. I was married to a beautiful woman named Marisol. We lived in Waco. I had a good job and a nice house. One day, Marisol came home and found me in bed with her sister. I hated her sister and never understood why I even wanted to have sex with her, but I did. Marisol threatened to strip me of my manhood if I didn't leave immediately. I loved her, and since that day I'd been drinking to dull the pain of my stupidity. I would have done anything to change what had happened. At least I had an explanation. I would have wanted him to quit drinking or at least cut down on his intake, but he seemed to be trying to drink himself to death. I kept thinking about Nicolas Cage in that depressing movie. I was amazed that he did as much work as he did. My driver's license was about to expire. I didn't know what to do. I guess I could just go and get a new one, but I was afraid they would notify Pennsylvania and someone would track me down. Jorge had a South Dakota state license, which was also up for renewal. After endless hours of drunken debate, we decided that I would go and renew Jorge's license with my picture and signature. Jorge said he didn't want to drive anymore, no way. We decided that if I took off my glasses and combed my hair properly, I could make it work. I didn't think at all about what kind of trouble I would be in if I got caught. By the end of the week, I was Jorge Toledo, and I had my driver's license to prove it. Jorge said I should also start using his social security number. He wasn't hiding from the law, just from an angry wife who probably wasn't even looking for him. Jorge started drinking more and half the time was unable to work. Leroy knew what was going on, but chose to kindly ignore it. Finally, about 2 months later, just as spring began, Jorge passed away in his sleep. He was only 45 years old. Leroy notified the authorities, and we arranged the cremation that Jorge had requested. What happened next surprised me immensely. When the coroner came for Jorge, Leroy helped him fill out the necessary paperwork. I tried to stay out of the way until they were finished. After the coroner left, Leroy handed me a copy of the death certificate. At the top of the page was the name Charles Raymond Terrell. 3 days later, Leroy and I scattered his ashes in the wind. Since Jorge was not wanted by the INS or the law, I had a lot of options open to me. Leroy was busy finding a replacement before we got too busy. I decided it would be safe to get a credit card. I couldn't justify buying my own cell phone. Leroy bought several to use at work to replace the old CB radios, and they had unlimited time and distance. I traded in the Mazda for a Ford Ranger. It was time to call Sarah before she got the bad news of my passing. "Dad, you're in South Dakota." "Isn't caller ID great? Don't tell your mother." "No way. I finally got her to admit why you left. I have no sympathy for her at all. By the way, the divorce papers came through last month. You're officially free." "Unfortunately, I'm also officially dead." What the hell does that mean? One of the guys at work died, and the coroner put my name on the death certificate. You'll probably be notified soon, so feign surprise and displeasure, but don't get too upset about it. It's okay to notify John, but please not your mother. Oh, wow. That's weird. I don't know how you pulled it off, but I guess congratulations. No one else has to know about this. I hope the police and your mother stop looking for me. I've been cremated and my ashes scattered to the four winds, so no funeral or services are required. I think at a time like this, it's a good thing Grandma and Grandpa are dead. Sorry, I didn't have insurance for you. Don't worry about the insurance. We're fine and John's fine. He just got promoted again, and he's also back on the roster for another tour. Do you have a new name, or is it better if I don't know it? Let's just say your father is now a Mexican-American and leave it at that. Daddy, can Eric and I come and see you? I'm pregnant and I'd really like to be with you. I know it's not good for you to come home, but can we come over there? We have a new Subaru Outback and Eric is dying to take a road trip. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you next week. I don't see why not, but I don't have a place for you to stay. I live in a garage. I'm sure there are motels nearby. I'll be waiting for your call. Don't forget. I found a small motel nearby and notified Sarah. They'll be here in a week. Leroy still hasn't found a replacement for Jorge. I had breakfast alone again that evening, and it was nowhere near as pleasant as it had been with my old friend. I thought about him on the way back to the garage and how sad he was when he died. I hated the thought of dying alone like that. Leroy was waiting for me when I pulled up. He had a smug smirk on his face that meant he had a surprise for me. I wasn't eager to find out what it was. You have a visitor. Who the hell would visit me? Surprise. It's your wife. The earth stopped, not because I was ecstatic, but because I was dreading the coming moment. All the effort and all the trouble was for nothing. There was no way in hell that bitch could find me, and yet she did. I slowly made my way towards the workshop while Leroy grinned from ear to ear. What the hell was so funny? I crossed the floor and went up the stairs. Without hesitating, I opened the door and stepped inside. Who the hell are you? Standing in front of me was the most beautiful girl I had ever seen. Long black hair and dark eyes emphasized her Hispanic features. Although she was well into her 30s, her body was 10 years younger. Her question caught me off guard, and I quickly realized why Leroy found it so amusing. Marisol had finally found Jorge, the man she'd kicked out 2 years ago, but never seemed to forget. You're not Jorge. Who the hell are you? Why did that nasty man send me here and tell me Jorge would be here soon? I took a chair and gestured for her to sit down. As she sat down, her eyes stayed fixed on mine, as if she didn't trust me. Do you want something to drink? No. Just tell me what's going on. For the next hour, I tried to explain to Marisol how much Jorge loved her and how much he cared about what he had done to her. In the course of the story, I also had to explain how I ended up using his name and why. There was still some alcohol left that Jorge hadn't finished, so we decided to help him out. I don't know if we memorialized Jorge's death or our suffering. She spent the night at our house, and the next day we drove to an open place where Leroy and I scattered the ashes. Later that day, she went home without the prize she had hoped to receive. She forgave his cheating, but had no way of letting him know until I opened a credit card account. I grieved her loss. I think in the final storybook ending, Marisol and I made wild, passionate love, but sadly, that was real life. Next week, Sarah is coming to visit. At least I have something to look forward to.